Donald Trump is currently at trial in multiple cases for over 90 different indictments. So there's a lot of trials going on. And so this one we're talking about now is a presidential immunity trial. And I found this to be probably the area where Trump has one of the weakest cases. Because Trump's argument is essentially, and the argument that his lawyers have to defend in court, that if the president does it, it's legal. As long as he does it while he's president of the United States, then it's absolutely legal for him to do it. And therefore, actions taken by him as president of the United States, which might be illegal for someone else, is not illegal for him because he's president of the United States and he did it in service of that job. And if you were to handcuff the president of the United States and tell him you can't break the law, then that would cripple his ability to do his job. In fact, I believe Trump even said that if the president couldn't break the law, then, well, you won't have a country anymore.
So I heard the meeting was quite amazing, and the justices were on their game. So let's see how that all turns out. But again, I say presidential immunity, very powerful. Presidential immunity is imperative, or you practically won't have a country anymore. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's not, well, if you don't have presidential immunity, the president will be less flexible in being able to engage in some of the darker parts of the job. Or if you don't have presidential immunity, then it's going to be much easier to go after. It's, you won't have a country anymore. This is always how it is with Trump. In every situation, it's either, you know, a total glory or total destruction. If you know, you don't donate $5 to Trump right now, it could mean that the country is destroyed. And I think a big problem of Trump messaging like this is that when there is actually a situation where it could actually all be over for Trump and he really needs people to rally around the flag, if he constantly is crying wolf, that this will mean the destruction of the country, this will mean the end, this will mean the end, then when that moment actually comes, will he be able to rally the support necessary? There's a problem with crying wolf all the time. But he believes that you won't have a country anymore if the president is not immune. Oh, here's also another one from Trump at the same press scrum after his trial was seen by the Supreme Court.
Having protests all over. He was talking about Charlottesville. Charlottesville was a little peanut, and it was nothing compared, and the hate wasn't the kind of hate that you have here. This is tremendous hate, and we have a man that can't talk about it because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't.
Charlottesville was like a peanut. Remember Charlottesville? Jews will not replace us. That woman that died. I think people forget, but there was a terror attack during that. Someone got killed, many others injured. A peanut, and not nearly as hateful as what's happening here today. I mean, come on. Anyway, let's listen to the arguments that the lawyer had to make in order to argue that as long as he does it in an official capacity, that i.e. as president of the United States and not as a private citizen, therefore he would be immune for said behavior and would not be able to be prosecuted. And so the different justices started throwing different scenarios at him, like, okay, well, under this logic, would this be allowed? And would this be allowed? And it led to some pretty wild moments. One was from the Obama era pick, Sotomayor, saying, if the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military to assassinate him, is that within his official acts to which he has immunity? So let's say Joe Biden was to say, well, I guess we can go with Trump since it's we'll just go with Trump. If Trump was to say, I don't like this candidate, he's too corrupt, we need to take him out because he's so bad, he's so corrupt, would that be covered by immunity? An official act meaning that after he leaves office, you could not prosecute him for assassinating his rival candidate. And the other person says, his lawyer, Trump's lawyer, John, that could well be an official act. The assassination of a rival campaign opponent could very well be an official act. And if it is an official act under this logic, assassinating your rival opponent would be covered by presidential immunity. Now, I used to joke about this before. Like, if we take this to its logical conclusion, does that mean Trump would have to defend, like, possibly destroying his political opponent, or, you know, any president killing their political opponent? And I said that as like, I mean, isn't that the logical end conclusion? But I never thought that one of the justices would throw it at them. And I certainly didn't think that their genuine answer would basically be, yeah, I mean, as long as it's official, as long as it's done as president of the United States. And if that is the case, and I say this with, I mean, a layer of TOS irony protection, President Biden, you know what to do. Anyway, next interaction that I wanted to highlight. So here's some audio, because the oral testimony was streamed online. So if you wanted to go listen to 3, 4, 5 hours of oral testimony, you very well could. But I just wanted to show some highlights. Here is Trump's lawyer, John Sawyer, talking to one of the Supreme Court justices. And the Supreme Court justice asks, if a president sells nuclear secrets to a foreign adversary, is that immune? Here was his response.
If a president sells nuclear secrets to a foreign adversary, is that immune?
That
now,
sounds
let me throw this out there. Donald Trump broke the Presidential Records Act. He violated it, which is also the same act that he increased the penalties for while in office, so he can't claim that he didn't have knowledge. Part of the scandal around that is that there's audio of Donald Trump showing classified documents to reporters that they're not allowed to see. And there's some questions by former Trump staffers about whether or not he sold, now we don't know if so far it's testimony, if he sold information to other people, either American National Defense secrets or something. And if he has these in his possession and he's trying to hide them from the National Archives, which he tried to do, he tried to hide these classified documents from the National Archives. Was he trying to sell it? We don't know for sure. There's some testimony from his former staffers that indicate he may very well be. But let's listen to the lawyer's statement.
Is that immune?
That sounds like, similar to the bribery example, likely not immune. Now, if it's structured as an official act, he would have to be impeached and convicted first before.
What does that mean if it's structured as an official act?
Well, I don't know in the hypothetical whether or not that would be an official act. You'd probably have to have more details to apply the blazing game analysis or even the Fitzgerald analysis that we've been talking about.
If a president sells...
How would you structure? Why even answer it this way? How would you structure the selling of America's nuclear secrets for profit as an official act? Is the Trump campaign thinking about how to do these things officially? Why not just say no? That doesn't seem official. That doesn't seem like... No, but he has to include. Let me be clear. If Trump does that officially, then it's okay. Continue with the logic. Let's keep going down the road. How about if the president orders the military to stage a coup? What then?
How about if a president orders the military to stage a coup?
I think that, as the Chief Justice pointed out earlier, where there is a whole series of, sort of guidelines against that, so to speak, like the UCMJ prohibits the military from following a plainly unlawful act. If one adopted Justice Alito's test, that would fall outside. Now, if one adopts, for example, the Fitzgerald test that we advanced, that may well be an official act, and he would have to be, as I'll say in response to all these kinds of hypotheticals, has to be impeached and convicted before he can be criminally prosecuted. But I emphasize to the court that...
Well, he's gone. Let's say this president who ordered the military to stage...
This is a good follow-up question, because my question would have been, okay, he's no longer president, but we know that he tried to commit crimes while president, specifically an attempted overthrow of the United States. It got stopped, didn't happen. He's no longer president of the United States. He tried to destroy our democracy. Is that something he would be immune from? Meaning there would be no consequences as long as he tried to do it through, some official capacity, whatever that may be. Is there anything that could hold him to account?
A coup. He's no longer president. He wasn't impeached. He couldn't be impeached. But he ordered the military to stage a coup, and you're saying that's an official act.
I think it would depend.
That's immune.
I think it would depend on the circumstances whether it was an official act. If it were an official act, again, he would have to be impeached.
Well, what does that mean, depend on the circumstances? He was the president. He is the commander-in-chief. He talks to his generals all the time, and he told the generals, I don't feel like leaving office. I want to stage a coup. Is that immune?
If it's an official act, there needs to be impeachment and conviction beforehand because the framers viewed that kind of
If
very
it's an
low
official
risk.
act, is it an official act?
If it's an official act, it's impeachment.
Is it an official act?
On the way you've described that hypothetical, it could well be. I just don't.
It could well be. So, he calls the generals up and says, I don't want to leave office. How do you do that as an official act? And if you can do that as an official act, isn't that terrifying? That mechanism should not exist. That avenue should not exist. That if he doesn't want to leave office, he can just bypass Congress. He can bypass the voters. He can bypass the Electoral College. He can bypass the institutions that are much older than him and just be like, no, I'm going to stay president. As long as he can structure it as an official act, that would be fine. I mean, at this point, how would you even stop somebody from not trying again and again and again?
No, you'd have to, again, it's a fact-specific, context-specific determination.
That answer sounds to me as though it's like, yeah, under my test, it's an official act, but that sure sounds bad, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly sounds very bad, and that's why the framers have a whole series of structural checks that have successfully, for the last 234 years, prevented that very kind of extreme hypothetical.
Yeah, well, we also didn't have Trump. We also didn't have somebody who tried to do what Trump tried to do, which was put up fake slates of electors, which we know that they tried to do, have executive orders made to use the military to seize voting machines. So using the military in service of this fake elector coup plot. He tried to call the Georgian Secretary of State to intimidate him into changing the election outcomes, telling him to find the votes, and gave him the exact amount of votes that he was down by. Some people say, no, that's just him trying to get every vote counted. Why would he give him the exact number of votes that he was down by? I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. If his main interest was making sure every vote was counted, why was he just pressuring people where he was losing? And also pressuring them with the exact number of votes lost. And then when they say they don't have the power to do it because it's out of their control, they can't change the election results, they haven't found any evidence of mass fraud, he tries to intimidate them, telling Brian Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, if you do not make me win this, if you don't, I'm putting it bluntly, I don't remember the exact words, you're going to find some drastic consequences. And next time when Brian Raffensperger ran for Secretary of State after he stood by the institution and not Donald Trump over the institution, what happened? Donald Trump endorsed his primary opponent. Now his primary opponent lost. Brian Raffensperger won re-election, so he won. But that doesn't mean Donald Trump didn't try to give him consequences for it. And these are just a few examples. There's so many other examples. I don't even want to get to January 6th and him just sitting there as everything went down. Point is if you make it so that there's no consequence for attempting to bend and twist the system to keep you as president, illegally in some instances, because at the end of the day, he's president of the United States and he's immune. How can we say that we have a system of checks and balances? How does the judicial branch hold the president accountable? The legislative, judicial, and executive branch are supposed to keep each other in account. There's supposed to be a system of checks and balances. But if we remove all legal consequence from the president of the United States, the person who, if anything, should maybe have some of the most legal consequences, because he is the president of the United States. He is the most powerful person in America, possibly in the world, depending on how you talk about American preeminence. And you'd want to take all the legal barriers, take off the bumpers for that man after seeing what Donald Trump tried to do last time. What it sounds like to me is that Donald Trump wants the ability to test and twist and bend the system towards his own needs, with a knowledge that at the end of it, he can just say official capacity. Yes, I tried to assassinate this official capacity. Yes, I tried to do this, but official capacity. Official capacity. Think about the precedent this sets, not only for Donald Trump, but let's say, the precedent this could set for Biden. If it's true that Biden could face no consequences, what would stop Joe Biden from attempting through official channels to try to organize illegal actions? drug smuggling, assassinations, etc. I mean, when we talk about our government, I think the last thing we should do is make it so all this shady criminalistic stuff that goes on just is brought out into the public and approved of. Now, someone might say, oh, I guess the transparency would be better. But I think the transparency combined with a lack of disapproval would probably just encourage more of that behavior. It would encourage criminality on behalf of the President of the United States. It would attract more people to the position of the President of the United States who wanted to abuse the position for criminal behavior, who tried to abuse the position to enrich themselves. And there's already a lot of people enriching themselves off the presidency of the United States. But if you can just do something in an official act, and you can say, well, I did an official act, you can't blame me, you can't prosecute me, you're giving the president a lot of legal flexibility to operate within the most powerful office in the land. Should we offer this to other people with immense power? Should we offer this to police officers? Should we offer this to other people who could have a real impact on the lives of others? Make real life and death decisions every day? Just give them complete immunity? I don't even want to talk about police immunity, but point is, why would we want to grant this immunity? I mean, of all the people to grant this immunity to, why would we grant it to the most powerful among us? The people that there needs to be checks against. From them using that power against us. The people who put them in that position. My goodness, man. This is a bizarre, bizarre, bizarre argument. And it kept going, by the way. I wanted to show you what happened from a questioning from Amy Coney Barrett. Now, for those of you who don't remember, Amy Coney Barrett was actually a Trump appointee to the Supreme Court, but there have been a few decisions, even though I think it was Gorsuch that has made more decisions that has angered some of the Republican base, that has not always pleased the Republican base, the decisions that they have come to. And so, in this instance, Amy Coney Barrett is throwing some, basic questions down the pipe towards a Trump lawyer, and he kind of admits something, whether it was purposeful or on accident, you can just figure that out for yourself. It kind of puts a little problem in the middle of his defense for Donald Trump. Listen to this.
You concede that private acts don't get immunity.
We do.
Okay, and I want to know if you agree or disagree about the characterization of these acts as private. Petitioner turned to a private attorney, was willing to spread knowingly false claims of election fraud to spearhead his challenges to the election results. Private?
As alleged, we dispute the allegation, but
Of
that
course.
sounds private to me.
Sounds private. Petitioner conspired with another private attorney who caused the filing in court of a verification signed by petitioner that contained false allegations to support a challenge.
That
Private.
also sounds private.
3 private actors, 2 attorneys, including those mentioned above, and a political consultant helped implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification proceeding, and petitioner and a co-conspirator attorney directed that effort.
You read it quickly. I believe that's
Yeah.
private.
So, Steve, just to underline what you're saying here, this is Amy Coney Barrett, the justice who Trump appointed, getting Trump's attorney to concede that some of the things that he has been charged with by the special counsel Jack Smith are definitely not covered by immunity.
I think that's right, Jake. And the reason why that's so important is because you can build out from there, sending this back to the trial court. And I think the question becomes twofold. First, are there 5 justices, perhaps Justice Barrett, the 3 Democratic appointees, and Chief Justice Roberts, who can agree on what the line is that puts those acts on the prosecutable side and maybe some other things not? And then, Jake, second, timing. If that agreement exists, if there is at least 5 votes for that proposition, how quickly can the justices write that opinion, especially if there are separate opinions, concurrences, or dissents from the other 4 Republican appointees, from Justices Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh?
I mean, big part of the reason why Donald Trump was pursuing presidential immunity was not just so he can have more flexibility once he's in the office. It's also to help cover his ass going into the election due to all of the charges he's facing for his time of crimes that he committed while he was in office. And so for his lawyer to come out and just basically admit that many of the crimes that he's accused of, some of which were directed by government officials, some of which were done while he was president of the United States during the end of his presidency, is not covered by presidential immunity, would mean that even if Donald Trump won this case, if we're going by his own lawyer's arguments, that would not necessarily make him immune due to the fact that many of this was performed in an official capacity. Was not performed in an official capacity. But if not, much of this was not informed in an official capacity, is the argument going to be moving forward for the Trump people is that as long as they can make his actions inside the institutions, even if they're criminal, then he can get away with it moving forward, as less of an effort to protect himself from the crimes that he's committed. I mean, if he's running for president, if he wins, then I guess for him, that's kind of kicking that can down the road, doesn't it? And so it's maybe more of a plan about how can we make it so that Donald Trump cannot be criminally held liable for what he does in the next 4 years. When he says, hey, I lost, I want to stay president. That's just how it's going to be. And this is something I wanted to bring up. Donald Trump has never accepted a loss in politics. He's never accepted a loss in politics. And before every election, he's basically sending the message, back in 2016, less directly, in 2020, more directly, that if he loses, he's not going to accept the results of the election. In 2015, during the primary process, he was scuffling with different Republican candidates about whether the primaries that he lost were fair, if there was tricky games that stole it from him. Going into 2016, that was hanging in the air when he started to give some answers that made people think he was questioning the integrity of the elections, and his refusal to answer, well, if you lose, will you accept the results, gave people pause about what would happen if he lost. Then when he won, the election was fine, except for all the illegals that voted that made him lose the popular vote, none of which he proved. Then 4 years later, though, he's completely committed to the idea, openly and directly, that if he loses an election, the election is rigged. He said that in advance of the debates, he said that in advance of the election, that if Donald Trump loses the election, it is rigged. So under that math, in this two-party system, only one party can win. Only one party can win, and if it doesn't win, then that means that there must have been some malpractice. There must have been some action that cheated them. Just like there was back in 2015, just like there was in 2016 with the illegals he never proved, and just like in 2020, that was stolen. It's always Trump can only lose if he's a victim. He can never lose on his own merits. It's only because the system was manipulated against him every time. Which means, and we all know this, that if he loses in 2024, he's going to get on both of his feet, get in front of a microphone, and scream, stolen, stolen, stolen. Stolen, stolen. The election was stolen from me again. I can't believe it that they would steal from us again. They did it last time. They did it now. Can you believe it? Last time we knew that there's always going to be another opportunity. I'm 77, guys. Will there be another opportunity now? And then we have to deal with the results of the distrust of our institutions, the distrust of our democracy that he sowed the seeds of, and now we have to reap the harvest of all these lone wolf psychos that are going to go out there and possibly, I'm hoping against it, start getting violent because they think their democracy's dying. And is that really such a crazy logic? I say this, and I think some people might start to hold their breath when I say, I mean, if Trump starts saying he lost a second time, a lot of people are going to think this is our last opportunity. This is our last opportunity. We need to do something. It wouldn't be the first time that Trump-inspired terrorists had gone out and tried to do an attack. We had it multiple times. Most of the times, though, it gets shut down. Hopefully in the future, it'll get shut down too. But if you tell a crowd of people, oh my gosh, democracy is dying, and you respect democracy, maybe you had family members who died during World War II. Maybe you can trace your lineage back to the Civil War and the defense of the Republic. Maybe that you have some personal commitment because you were a veteran. Or maybe that you just like the idea of people being represented by leaders that they can elect and then unelect, if necessary, to get people who represents their interests, that listens to their interests, is responsive to their interests, and keeps their communities healthy, safe, and prosperous. If you disregard that, if you disregard the election system, if you disregard all of the institutions and tell them this was stolen, and if this remains stolen, our democracy will die. And we know how Trump talks. He says if he loses this immunity case, We won't have a country anymore. You think that if he loses in 2024, he's not going to tell the people, if we don't do something, we're not going to have a country anymore? And if you really think that, because the Republican base really does trust Trump, what would you do if your democracy was going to die? The tree of liberty must be watered by the blood of tyrants. What do you do? And I think that's the type of logic that led to January 6th. But if they think that this is it, because Trump's 77 now, he's getting up there in age, he's not campaigning like he used to, and this would be the second time in a row he got screwed from their worldview, I think that can inspire some, since he doesn't have the levers of power, I doubt he's going to be able to, grab the institutions to crush them from the inside. I mean, with Mike Johnson as House Speaker, you never know. And we know that RFK staffers want to see if they can use him to try to take enough votes away to send it back to the states, which are majority controlled by the houses. But most likely he would have to confront it from outside of the institution. And if you have to confront it from outside of the institution and he can't use a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo or presidential immunity to coup the government, some people might try to take actions in their own hands. And that's the thing that really worries me. Lone wolf terrorism that could be associated with the Trump loss. That's a real concern for me. I mean, of course, I also have a concern about his basic respect for democracy if he wins and what he might do for the country. But even in a Trump loss scenario, he's done so much damage to our public discourse that tearing off that Band-Aid and being done with Trump as he goes into his 80s, maybe he runs again in 2028. I think the Republicans would probably be sick of him if he lost 3 popular votes in a row and 2 elections in a row to run him again. But then again, the Turkish opposition keeps running the same guy again and again and again and again and again. He keeps losing, so you never know. But this is a scenario that really does worry me. It does worry me quite a bit.